What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Logical, Plausible, Probable. In this video, I'm going to outline 7 ways we can make the coronavirus pandemic not crush modern society. Before we get into that, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to be notified when new videos go live, make sure to click the little bell icon. Now, before I get into some common sense approaches to the chaos being caused by the coronavirus, I think we all need to put this challenge that we face in context. So let's look at the data in relation to demographics. If you are between 15 and 44, the mortality rate is 0.05%. That means there is a 99.5% chance you're going to be just fine. If you're between 45 and 64, you also have a 99.5% chance of being okay. If you're between 65 and 80, you have a 97.3% expectation of having a full recovery. Now, for people over the age of 80, things do become serious and the mortality rate skyrockets to somewhere between 8 and 12%. This last point leads to the first of the 7 ways I think we should be approaching this pandemic. Number 1, stop freaking out and help the elderly. All right, people, everyone needs to calm down. If you're under the age of 64 and don't have a major health issue, even if you catch it, you might not even know you're sick. Somehow, the supposedly catastrophic end of the world as we know it virus doesn't make a huge percentage of people even feel sick. Just think about that for a second. The majority of people don't even know they are sick because they never show symptoms. Most that do actually show some symptoms say they are relatively mild compared to a normal cold or flu. So this means most of us are just carriers of the virus and our immune systems are being able to beat it. Now, does this mean we should just act like everything is normal? Of course not. But we need to put 100% focus on helping those with pre-existing medical conditions and the elderly not go into a full-scale economic shutdown and putting people's lives in utter chaos. Here in the United States, we've got governors talking about martial law. Over in Europe, you're being required to show papers to the police before you can even leave your house. Politicians are wanting to take over industries and basically implement government control over the means of production, and somehow suggesting that we shouldn't even consider what this means. I say, hang on a second. On one side, we've got a virus that doesn't make the majority of people actually feel sick, has a 0.9% fatality rate. We know exactly who the demographics are who are actually at risk. And then over on the other side, we've got politicians trying to leverage this mass panic to expand their control over all aspects of our lives. Something about this just doesn't seem right. Number 2, rely on antibodies generated by young people who have recovered. While we are all hopeful that researchers around the world can develop and test a viable vaccine, reality is that it will take at least a year, if not 18 months, for this to become a viable option. In the meantime, we cannot live in a worldwide panic about a bug that isn't even going to make the vast majority of people sick. Now, since the development of antibiotics, most people don't even realize that using antibodies from people who have recovered from infection used to be a standard modus operandi for treating new diseases. In fact, not only is this a viable option, it's exactly what the Chinese have been doing with great levels of success. When people recover, their immune systems have created the appropriate antibodies needed to beat the COVID-19 virus. So how is this being implemented? All you need is the blood or even just the plasma from people who have already recovered, so doctors can extract the antibodies and give them to people who are deathly ill. However, for this to actually work, you need a large number of young, healthy people who have built these antibodies available to donate their blood. Now, as a society, we have the ability for younger generations to help those at risk, but right now this isn't even being presented as an option by those in charge. Number 3, tell people summer heat is our friend. There is a reason most pandemics happen in the winter. The vast majority of viruses have an extremely narrow temperature window they can survive in, and the coronavirus is no different. The upcoming heat and humidity will directly lower their impact and shorten its life cycle. This means within the next 6 weeks, most of the planet will be at temperatures that work in our favor and against the coronavirus. This is yet another reason I don't understand why we're being told that the world needs to come to a complete stop all the way down to the local level. If the resources being dedicated were exclusively for the elderly and those with pre-existing conditions, and we were building a pool of young people to extract antibodies from, not only would we not be worrying about toilet paper, my next ideas about realistic government actions would suddenly make a lot of sense. Number 4, realistic economic actions by the government. Now, the vast majority of people don't have the financial resources to just not work for a month. Credit cards, student loans, they've got to be paid. Rent, car payments, child support, mortgages, those things all still go on, and that's before even talking about the money needed for food. So instead of all of this ongoing talk about billions of dollars in bailouts for major companies, how about politicians require all lenders to temporarily suspend debt payments and not allow the accrual of interest? If they're going to make it extremely difficult for people to work, at least they shouldn't allow this pandemic to ruin people's credit and cause massive amounts of additional stress for the average person who suddenly can't pay their bills on time. I mean, why should huge corporations be given billions to pay their bills when even 1 month of not paying ours can destroy credit for 7 years? At a minimum, lenders should be forced to not add negatives to credit reports during this national emergency. Let me know what you think about this idea in the comments. I know if I suddenly didn't have to worry about and have stress about paying my credit card bill and making my car payment, I would have a heck of a lot less stress about not being able to go to work. Number 5, help small businesses make payroll by suspending property, sales, and payroll taxes. All we seem to hear about is how the evil business owners should be paying their employees even if the company isn't operating. While this may seem reasonable to people who have never had to make a payroll, if you have no cash flow coming in because your business has been shut down, well, 99% of employers are not going to be able to make more than one payroll. It's just not an option. Not because they want to screw over their employees, but because they literally do not have the money in the bank. Beyond that, many industries being hit the hardest are restaurants, bars, and other hospitality businesses, all of which operate at extremely low profit margins. Now, if property taxes for their landlords were suspended, those businesses will have a much greater chance of being able to negotiate a modification to their rent. If sales tax payments were suspended, this would give them more disposable cash to actually help their employees and to stay in business. If payroll tax was suspended, even more cash would be available and the amount that could actually go to their employees would go up. Instead of money on top of what is actually given to the employee going to the government, the total amount needed would be less than it usually is. So what does this boil down to? If their fixed overhead costs like rent were able to be lowered, the total cash out of pocket needed for sales and payroll taxes was eliminated, suddenly many companies would at least be able to help their employees for another paycheck, even if they were only able to do it one time. That's better than nothing. So instead of vilifying small business owners, we need to pressure our federal, state, and local governments to give these people a chance of being able to actually help their employees make it through this crisis. Number 6, quarantine at state borders. While all we've heard for the last decade is how borders shouldn't exist, well, situations like this are exactly why they were created in the first place. Now here in the States, we need to look at temporarily creating quarantine lines around the individual states. By shutting down interstate travel other than for supply transfers, we would immediately be cutting off a massive cause of spreading of the virus. All of that while also being able to identify which areas, which states need the most attention. If we're already doing this on the national level, why wouldn't this also make sense to do on the state level? Although most Americans don't realize this, many of our states are geographically the size of most countries around the world, but don't have the same level of population density. This gives us a major advantage to contain the spread without having all of the economic chaos in areas that aren't being affected or are able to recover more quickly. Number 7, ask work-from-home software providers to offer discounts. The technology now exists for implementation of work from home to become a realistic solution for a huge percentage of businesses. Now is the perfect time for mass adoption of this technology, not only to help stem the rate of infection and economic fallout, but also as a long-term benefit in reduction of traffic congestion, commute times, and overall levels of pollution caused by transportation requirements. If state and local governments would step up and become the leaders in adopting this technology for government employees, while also offering incentives to local businesses that do the same, we have a great opportunity to shift the paradigm in how businesses operate. The federal government needs to offer tax incentives to the companies that do make these types of efforts, because helping to maintain economic stability and minimize the number of layoffs deserves benefits. Now, these are just a few common sense ideas that are realistic and don't require the complete upheaval of our lives now and from the big picture. We all need to just calm down and remember that our politicians are just humans, and many of them are in the demographic that is most at risk. It's naive to think that this isn't affecting their thought processes and being extenuated to influence what are viewed as the best solutions. We must make our voices heard and not let politicians think just throwing money around will solve the problem. That's it for this video. Obviously, these are just a few ideas on ways we can help mitigate the global impact of this coronavirus pandemic. Please make sure to like the video, and if you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe and click the little bell if you want to get notified when new videos go live. If you have any additional ideas you think people need to consider, make sure to drop them in the comments. But please, make sure to only post things that are logical, plausible, and probable.